time to start your engines and be part of the conversation. You can always ask the experts, Raffi and Dan Rosenberg, because it's now time for Clutch Radio. The show starts now.
When does the show start?
No.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. It's already January 21st. We're 3 weeks into 2023.
Yeah.
It's 10 a.m. on the West Coast, 1 o'clock on the East. And our first comment, of course, Jacob Angel. Good morning, Raffi and Dan.
Good morning, Jake.
Now, speaking of Jake, Corvette announced their hybrid all-wheel drive 2024. That's coming out. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's fantastic. I think it's look, the writing is on the wall for the use of hybrid technology. It's been for a long time. Toyota is heavily invested in hybrid technology, and they were smart to do so. They were pioneers of it, so much so that they were actually leasing their technology to other companies that had fallen behind. I think Toyota still leads in hybrid technology, although from a performance perspective, F1 has mandated hybrid technology as part of their drivetrain requirements. So they've been doing that for quite some time. And so you've seen companies like Ferrari, Porsche, high performance companies, and now, of course, Corvette utilizing that system. And this was part of the move to mid-engine platform for the Corvette in order to facilitate a more effective and easier, more effective weight distribution for a hybrid platform, which is the ideal is mid-engine.
Yes. Jake says he loves the E-Ray, but it won't be available until late this year.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, certainly fine.
And didn't get on a list yet, I don't think.
What will be interesting to see is where they position the E-Ray from a pricing perspective. Because obviously,
it's 106, I believe.
106.
I think that's what I saw.
And will they do a Z06 E-Ray? That's
they said this is faster than the Z06.
Well, that's the other question is how. So this then will be a premium Corvette performance vehicle above all the other Corvettes, because it's hard to make a performance hybrid that's slow, because all the power is there. You can really romp the heck out of a hybrid vehicle because it's got a tremendous amount of instantaneous torque. So this is it. Dan, you've just
actually that starts at 102 as shown 115 840.
Which, if you think about it, for a premium performance car, that's pretty amazing. And I think what's also amazing is they're showing it in a range of climate conditions. They're implying it can drive in the snow. Is that what I just?
It's all-wheel drive.
Ah, well, there you go.
It is all-wheel drive. 0 to 60, 2.5 seconds.
That's pretty impressive.
655 combined horsepower.
Yeah. 10.5 seconds in the quarter mile.
Yeah.
Is that right? That's, those numbers were motorcycle numbers not that long ago. To achieve that, let's see where they're, okay. Yeah. Yep.
So the front drive is electric motor, and the back drive is your standard.
There you go. And the most effective way to achieve that is by a mid-engine. Well, good for them, because I think that's going to be an important performance leap. And look, you're going to be seeing it in other cars. You're going to see it in Mustangs. You're going to see it in Camaros. You're going to see it in other premium performance vehicles, because I believe that hybrid is the technology for the future. Eliminating entirely the internal combustion engine from a performance vehicle, I don't think is the way to go. Our dependency on the precious metals for mining to gain the amount of electric batteries we need on a full electric vehicle, I think, is going to be daunting if production were to continue at the rate that is expected.
So it has stealth mode. You can run it just on the electric for a little while.
Yeah.
Front wheels. So you can kind of, pull out of your driveway if you have to leave early in the morning without making a rumble.
Oh, that's a nice convenience for your neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got to say, it's a good-looking car. It looks very similar to the current Corvette. The question remains is whether or not they will differentiate the Corvette line with a different-looking car for the hybrid model, or they'll just simply transition to all Corvettes being hybrid.
Yeah, they should probably do that. Now, Adam Jones, good morning. He says at least they kept the Corvette pretty much the same design, unlike those ugly Mustangs and Broncos. Well, the Mustang's really not a Mustang.
Right.
It's an SUV.
Yes.
And the Bronco looks like the 1970 Bronco.
Yeah, the Bronco reminds me of what Toyota did with the FJ, based on the original classic Toyota FJs. And they didn't quite work out from a design perspective. There's something about taking design elements from the past and integrating them into the current design requirements. The design elements tend to puff up and get more exaggerated, just simply because the visual requirements, the structural requirements, the bumper protection, safety, all that stuff just has to be bigger. So the proportions have changed dramatically. And because of that, I think a lot of these designs that call back to the past, they get too close to the past, and the proportions don't work as successfully as they did in the past.
Janice is with us today. Good morning, Janice. She's at home recovering from RSV. Spent a few days in the hospital. Wow. Good to see you both. Good to see you.
Yeah. Glad you're recovering, Janice, and hope things go well with that recovery. RSV can be very debilitating. So hopefully that. Yeah.
REO Speedwagon also.
Yes. That can be very debilitating.
That's a bad joke. Mark Green says hello to Raffi.
Hello to Mark Green.
No hello to me. Thanks, Mark. But just hello to Raffi. That's okay.
Well, Mark actually, Mark
has
and I
a big
just
podcast,
chatting.
correct?
What's that?
He has a big podcast, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He has a probably one of the most well-known podcasts. Mark Green runs Cars Yeah, and and Cars Yeah is fantastic. It's astonishing. If you go on the Cars Yeah website, carsyeah.com, what you'll find is literally a who's who of people in the automotive world. And he runs a broad spectrum of interests, from F1 people to drivers to race car people to vintage people to classic car people, just a whole series. And he asks very pointed questions about the industry, about the future of automobiles, and also he's very passionate about cars. So some of those questions tend to be really enlightening.
Oh, maybe he'll want to talk to somebody doing a car sitcom. By the way, this is an F1 hat.
That's McLaren.
It's my McLaren F1.
That's right.
My friend from Reddit got it. I have something interesting to ask you about. Okay. I'm not going to name names, but I'm going to just say that an acquaintance wanted to purchase a Porsche GT3 Touring.
Oh, okay.
Brand new.
Yes.
And they're not easy to get.
No, they're not.
You've got to get on a list. You've got to get anyway.
Yeah.
So one was found that somebody gave up their allocation. The car had already been built. It was on its way to the dealership, or it might have actually been at the dealership. And Porsche, Janice wants to know how she can see the Pilot. Well, you know what? I'll send you a message offline, Janice. Since you're at home and you're recuperating, I may have something special for you. I'll send you a DM on Facebook. Anyway,
back to the GT3.
So he wanted this GT3. They had a Touring.
Yep.
Gorgeous car. Apparently Porsche is getting upset at dealers marking them over sticker.
That's right.
So they have a rule: you can't sell it over. It's at sticker. So the only way they'd sell it to him is if he bought another vehicle from them off their used lot.
Oh.
And then immediately traded in for $100,000 loss.
$100,000.
That's how they marked it up, $100,000.
Wow.
So he had to buy another Porsche for $125,000. Never saw it. Never was shipped to him. Had to wait for it to be registered. Once it was registered, he then immediately traded it in and got a $25,000 credit on his trade-in. And that's how they made a $100,000 markup. That's a very creative way to cheat the system when the manufacturer says you can't mark up a car.
That is a very, very clever way of cheating the system. Unfortunately, this is typical of the new premium car market. Dealers have become aware of how valuable these cars are and how much they are in demand, because many people buy them at $150,000, $200,000, and then they come out into the open market and they sell them and make more money than the dealer. Now, Ford, with the new Ford GT, actually makes you sign a contract that says you cannot sell the vehicle after you purchase it at the $600,000 price. And I think the term is 1 year after it is delivered. So
is 1 year, 12,000 miles, because they know no one's going to put 12,000 miles on that car.
No one's going to put 12,000 miles on the car. Some of these cars, I believe the GTs, I believe Ford says don't drive it in weather under 45 degrees. So there's all kinds of limitations because of the tire technology, the tires on that car. They don't respond.
Drive it right now.
That's right. It's 43 now, isn't it?
38 right now.
38 now. Okay.
Yeah.
So you cannot sell it until a year after the car has landed on your premises. So what happens is many people buy them, they store them, they just put operational miles on them, and then they've gone to sell them. And when you sell them a year later, they're $1 million cars. So if you're comfortable putting $650,000 to $700,000 down with the hope of making another 250 grand down the road, it's not a bad way to go. But here's the rub. If Ford finds out that you have sold the vehicle, boom, you're off the list. Buy
another one.
You can. And to get on that initial list, that's the other thing I left out. To even get on that list, you have to submit an essay, a video, some history about your ownership of Ford GTs, and the list goes on and on. It is not an easy car to get on the list to purchase. And this is also true with Ferrari.
Yeah.
If you went to buy a brand new Ferrari today and you had never had a Ferrari, they would check your history, they would check your details, they would check and see what and boy, you better be darn favored to purchase one of these things, because most people who buy new Ferraris, they have 5 or 6 Ferraris already. And Ferrari looks at them and says, okay, we like you, we will give you Ferrari. Okay, yeah, it's very good.
Now, Jacob says, of course, Corvette has done that with the Z06, but if you keep it for 6 months, you get $5,000 back. You get a little rebate back.
So that's nice. Interesting, which is also another creative way of doing this, because that way, if you sell prematurely, the warranty is void and you're blacklisted from GM. That's, just what a lot of... They're turning the opportunity to purchase these cars into a privilege, so you have to follow these new rules.
And now Janice asked, right as you say that, how can they make those rules? Well, I say they can make those rules because why not? They own the company. It's not like how do they enforce it? In theory, I mean, couldn't you buy it in a company name and then just sell the company to somebody and they get the asset of the company, never change its ownership?
You could certainly do that. There are lots of just as there are creative ways for the car companies to do this, there are creative ways for people to get around it. But the question then becomes, how much time do you want to spend to make that money in an arena that is already pretty exclusive? There are not that many people that are looking to get a brand new car at a premium price that are willing to pay the premium on top of the premium that's being asked. And see, Ferrari figured this out. I can't recall what year it was, but they said, this is crazy. We gotta figure out how to remove the speculators. So they raised the price exorbitantly. It just jumped enormously. It didn't scare people away. In fact, more people came to it. And so they had to put together these kinds of limitations, these exclusivities. There's a car that Ferrari has. I don't know if they still do this program, but originally the Ferrari FXX, beautiful car, very unusual.
That's a TV network.
Yeah, the only way to get the FXX Ferrari was to sign up with a system that allowed you to arrive at the racetrack where the car was kept. You never took possession of the car. The crew would then prepare the car for you. You'd have your racing suit, your helmet, everything all set up. You would then get in the car, drive it around the racetrack, have your fun with it, bring it back in. They would test everything. They would check all the various telemetries and all that. And then they would look at your performance, and then you could attend a school to try and improve your performance. You would, of course, have dinner there. You would talk with Ferrari people, and 2-3 days later, you fly home. Now, the privilege of this is $1.5 million, and you never own the car. And when you're done with that experience, they just say, thank you very much. And you leave the experience, and a new person is plugged in by Ferrari into that experience.
Same car?
Same car.
Oh, it's timeshare.
It's timeshare for automobiles.
Wow.
Yeah.
We do have our friend in Ireland saying morning, evening, gentlemen. And then like Mark Green, who only said hello to you and then said hi to me. He also said morning, evening, everyone in chat too. So I wanted to be very inclusive.
That's good.
And Janice, you're right. If you're willing to play that game, then you got to play by their rules if you want that car. I'd rather have an old 80s classic and just play with that and not deal with all the BS.
It's to get in the head of buyers that will pay this kind of premium. It's harder for us to understand, but for you and me, it's like the Porsche built a car called the Carrera GT, very specialized car in the early 2000s, and it was the last of the wicked analog 6-speed manual powerful Porsche performance cars, and they are really hard to drive. Historically, people have wrecked many. Jerry Seinfeld owns one, and he says pretty confidently that every time he takes it out, it scares him to death, and he never drives it hard. And so these cars, they're now hovering at around $2 million. So if you take it in for service, a general service is going to be 20 grand. Well, people who hear, holy cow, 20 grand for a general service. Well, if you run the math down, you and I might have a $2,000 car. That's $20 service.
Yeah.
So it's not that big a deal.
Nothing.
And Dan, who just commented about the privilege, the price of privilege, I believe it was. That's the whole point, is that a lot of people, if you have that kind of money, it doesn't matter to you if you're spending an extra 100 grand. If you make $1 million a year, or I'm sorry, if you make $1 million a month, it doesn't matter if you spend $100,000 more than you should, or if you get it back the next month, you've got more.
Yeah. And Paul Walker died in one.
That's right.
That's what he was driving.
Yeah.
Now to shift gears a little bit, our good dealer friend, Ray Pepper, he bought some Carvana stock. He bought 5,000 shares at $6.05 a share. I'm going to be rich.
Well, Ray, I can't say that was a bad investment, because I do think that Carvana is going to do well. What nobody's been able to figure out is why it took such a big jump. Carvana took like a 40% leap, didn't it, Dan?
46% one day, and then it's still dropped. Now they've done the old poison pill. They put that thing out that if anybody buys more than 5% of the stock, it basically shuts down trading or something. That way nobody can do a hostile takeover. And they also sold $4 billion of their loans, because they had their own little bank, Bridgecrest, I think it was called. they sold all those loans to Ally Bank. So that gave them $4 billion to play with to keep going. So little things like that will keep them running. What I see happening is I think they'll sell off the ADESA auto auction brand. They bought that for $2 billion. They overpaid for it. And someone like a Copart would be smart to do something like that, to go out and buy those all up for, give them $1.5 billion. Yeah, they're going to lose money. But that, of course, lowers their tax burden by quite. Right. I mean, they probably pay no tax anyway. They've never made money.
Right.
It's actually make money.
And that's the other thing too. And when you get into that scale, you're actually looking weirdly for things to lose money on, so that your gains in the things that you're doing very well on are not so big that you get sucked into a tax situation that draws down the larger picture. This is why so many people donate very expensive items to museums. They can benefit from the donation over a 3-year period of time that actually reduces their tax burden.
Yeah, and so just looking at his numbers real quick. So it was up to $380. It's down to $6. So he bought it at $605. And if it hits $8, are you going to take your 10 grand out and walk away? Or how are you going to hold it till it hits, if it goes back in the hundreds, which I don't think it will, but it could.
I think Ray's on target if he, depending on how he does his investments, if you are smart, and this, of course, we're not an investor team here. We're just speculating like anyone else does. But if you are, let's say, disciplined, and you set your stock target and you say, I'm buying at 6, but I'm absolutely going to sell, regardless of what I think, at 62 or 38. You actually pick that target. And when that target is hit, you don't question, you don't doubt, you don't anything, boom, you sell it and you make your money and you take it out and you go and you move on to the next thing. Setting targets, being disciplined about your investments is one of the most important things. And the more you do it, the more you're disciplined about it, the more you have disciplined successes, which causes you to believe in the discipline process. And this is what many people don't do. They're not disciplined about how they spend their money. Same thing with people when they go and shop and they buy they go look around. They say, well, I'm going to buy a shirt. It's going to be $20. They find a shirt that's $10 that suits their purposes because it's 50% off. And then they go and pay for it. And then they tell themselves they saved $10, but they haven't actually saved that $10. What you're supposed to do is take that $10, pretend you paid $20 for it, and go
save it
in the savings account.
Yes.
So raise
it hold till 2025.
That's okay. So that's the other strategy, is to hold discipline on a year of sale. I don't recommend holding on a year of sale because too many things can happen, and there's a large spread in that year in terms of when you would sell. I would instead, Ray, guide you to pick a disciplined dollar amount to sell at that point, and then you take your gains regardless of the year.
Well, the only thing is you have long-term versus short-term.
That's true.
Short-term gains, you pay ordinary income. Long-term, you pay capital gains.
Right. And what we don't know and we don't need to know is what Ray's financial situation is, because sometimes it's better to take one over the other depending on what your total income is.
Now, I'm looking at Amazon stock because Amazon stock is quite low at the moment. It's like pre-pandemic, or like pandemic, March 27th of 2020, it was $95, and right now it's $97.
Mm-hmm.
It was up to as high as $160, but it launched at 9 cents.
Yes.
In 1997, and it hovered under $1 for a couple of years almost.
Yeah.
And then it had a big jump up to $3-4, and then it went back down into the penny stocks.
Yeah.
And you look at that. Can you imagine if you got shares at 9 cents?
I don't have to imagine it.
You have them?
No, I'm very close friends with someone who bought $5,000 worth in that initial pool. And yeah. And they're still holding it. And I say they because it's a group that made the purchase.
55,555 shares.
Yes.
Is what they got. So multiply that by 97.25. Not a bad investment.
Yeah, I bet your little handheld calculator doesn't have the zeros to.
I had to turn it sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 5.4 million.
That's right. Yeah. And if you run the numbers on many other stocks, you'll find that many tech stocks have done that well. But this is a whole other conversation. And we could have the same conversation around automotive stocks, because there have been some automotive stocks that have done enormously well. Some people cite Tesla as an automotive stock, but I believe that it's really a tech stock and not an automotive stock.
Yeah, well, Tesla, I've told my story that the day I bought my Tesla back in 13, I think is when I got it, the stock was $52 a share. I bought 100 shares. And then it went up to 200, went up to 250. I'm like, this is great, because my goal was to sell it and buy the next Tesla.
The next Tesla.
And it went up, and then it started dipping, went below 100. And I was like, uh-oh. And I finally was like, I said it, so if it hits 100, just get rid of it, because I'm like, it's going to fail. Boy, was that dumb.
But look at the money you made.
Not much. I did not make much. Made a little bit, but it'd be worth, like, I think $290,000 now. That $5,000 investment.
Yeah, and that's it is very, very easy to look at what could have been done rather than what you did do. But what you did do creates other benefits that we tend to not see, because when we live through the benefits of making financial decisions, we tend to wash over them. It's like after you've eaten a nice meal.
Yeah.
Dan says some stocks are a steady average growth that you can sit on for years, while others are more subjected to market fluctuations. Dan bought a 1K Harley Davidson, sat on it for 5 years, paid for half of a new bike. And that's another way to look at your stock purchase opportunities. The long haul.
Wait a minute, half a new bike, was that a unicycle?
Yes, he bought a unicycle. Right. Harley Davidson only makes those for special customers. The long-term stocks, the long holds, are the ones that tend to be utilities and things like that people are going to have, and certainly evergreen brands tend to also be long haul stocks, but they are subject to fluctuations. The key is to buy in early enough and just hold them. Telephone stocks, bank stocks, things like that, insurance, funereal industry stocks, things like that, bundled stock groupings that are fairly conservative, things that annuities tend to use as part of their bundled investment perspectives. Now, I have never seen, although I'm sure there may be, a bundled stock package of automotive stocks, but I would suspect that the reason why there isn't is they tend to not perform on an aggregate level to the point where people would be enticed to buy in that grouping.
Yeah. Norn asks, is that unicycle a Harley or a Davidson? Good point.
An excellent question. My suspicion it's the Harley and not the Davidson.
Yes, because nobody says, hey, I'm driving my Davidson, but people say I'm driving my Harley.
Yeah.
Or maybe that would be the Davidson model.
Yeah, you never know.
It could be the John Davidson. You get a big swoopy head of hair and bright white.
Incidentally, since Harley has been brought up, do you know, Dan, trivia question, what year did Harley Davidson first start building motorcycles?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes.
I'm going to say it's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago. It's longer than people think ago.
I'm going to go with 1894.
Well, you're close. Harley Davidson's first official motorcycle was 1903.
All right.
Now, if you think about that, that's quite a few years ago.
Good point.
Yeah. So 120 years.
Dan got it because we're on a little delay.
Dan got it right. 1903 is that first year.
Dan.
That's quite a few, 120 years of manufacturing motorcycles. Now, what's fantastic about Harley Davidson is that other than the AMF period, which Harley Davidson enthusiasts tend to be very careful about when they talk about the AMF era, AMF purchased Harley, and for a while they were making Harley Davidson motorcycles, which did not
golf carts.
Yes, and golf carts. It did not go well. And Harley's had some financial challenges over the years, not the least of which is what they're in the midst of right now, because they had an enormous peak about around the time of the 100th anniversary. And since then, they've had some difficulties maintaining the volume that they had once achieved, because many people were buying Harleys and wanting to fulfill a lifelong dream of owning a Harley. Harley Davidson motorcycles, if you are not a regular rider or have not ridden Harleys, they're big bikes. They're motorcycles that require some management and some thinking. And many people come to those bikes after having been college riding enthusiasts on a 250 or a 350 Honda, and then they're ready to step on top of a near 1 liter Harley Davidson that weighs close to 2.5 to 3 times what the bike they were formerly familiar with.
Now, these dances, those were more like motorized bicycles back then, which is really what a motorbike was.
Yes, and Honda made fantastic product. Honda actually did a magnificent thing for the motorcycle industry in general. They basically copied British motorcycles, which were notorious for poorly functioning, both for electrical and performance purposes. And Honda basically copied British Triumph, Norton, BSAs, and built a Japanese motorcycle with a phenomenal engine. Honda is an engine company, not a car company, and sold motorcycles by the thousands. So they literally created a mega industry for motorcycles, especially in North America. And that's where Harley thrived, was on that ride up, because Honda didn't build a big, powerful touring bike until they realized we better build a big, powerful touring bike. But by then, Harley was well in the game and had established so many followers. And because they were an American bike, really, really popular bike.
And Dan says the 250 Honda Scrambler was their pivot point.
That's Ron Erickson, who...
Ron Erickson said it. Sorry,
yeah.
Ron.
Yeah,
Hi,
and
Ron.
he's right. The Honda Scrambler...
Dan's there.
Yeah, the Honda Scrambler was the pivot point. He's spot on with that comment, because it was cheap. It was just the right amount of power. And you'd have to be a super stupid rider to get hurt on a 250 Scram. And so what that did was that motorcycle allowed sort of dual purpose use. You could have fun with it off-road and do kind of the jumps and rugged terrain type use. And you could just come right off-road and ride as a regular street bike.
And it was cool.
It was cool. People saw you with it, and they thought, that's a cool bike.
Now, obviously, Honda went on to make cars. Did Harley Davidson ever experiment with a 4-wheel vehicle?
Not to my knowledge. Harley made what was called a Servicar, Servicar. You can pull up an image of that. And the Servicar was basically a 3-wheeled service vehicle. And you saw these being used as parking enforcement vehicles. Sometimes they were used for local fire and survey type stuff. These were vehicles that could service certain areas.
It was a trike.
It was a trike, exactly. And the Servicar was kind of a clever way to get people who were not familiar with the balance requirements for motorcycle to use motorcycles. And to this day, trike conversions actually a very large market now, because as one of my friends recently did, he's getting on in years and he still loves to ride his motorcycle. He had his Harley converted to a trike because he no longer felt comfortable and confident with his balance as he's aged, but he didn't want to give up riding. So the trike, as you call it, or Servicar, is actually kind of a great way to go.
So you start with a tricycle and you end with a tricycle.
Yes. And as Dan points out, Harley Davidson made snowmobiles and some mini dirt bikes, which is true. But I don't think they ever had a large enough market share from any of those areas to be able to expand as Honda has. Honda, because they were an engine company, and we've talked about this before, Honda couldn't get any company to buy their engines. And that's what they wanted to do. So they eventually said, well, we're going to make everything that uses an engine. So they make snow blowers, they make lawnmowers, they make motorcycles, they make automobiles, they make snowmobiles, and they built an industry around their engine technology. And if you look at Honda engines, everything from magnificent four-cylinder twin cam racing engines all the way into their incredible Formula One engine packages. And Dan has pulled up what looks to be, is that a Harley golf cart from AMF?
That's an AMF Harley golf cart from the 60s.
Yeah. And here too, golf cart as an industry, I think the largest golf cart company from a manufacturing perspective in terms of volume is Easy Go. Easy Go Kart Company, I believe, has the largest volume of golf carts, and they're an American company. I believe in Atlanta, Georgia, is where they're stationed.
Now, the Harley Davidson edition of, I believe, it was the Ford F-150, was, they licensed the name for a Ford pickup truck, but it was never actually a Harley Davidson vehicle.
And the Harley in the late 90s to early 2000s, they had a very, very effective outgoing licensing program where they licensed with other companies in partnership to be able to leverage the Harley name. And this included fashion brands, automobiles, trucks, accessories, home decor items. You could buy a Harley Davidson lampshade. You could buy a poker set that was branded with Harley Davidson. You could buy pocket watches, knives were very big, and all sorts of branded Harley Davidson product. And in the late 90s and early 2000s, there were Harley Davidson dealerships that sold more volume in that type of product than actual motorcycles.
Well, there you go. Now, our good friend Ray did give us a car for the car of the week. And I know you also have a good old school.
I do have an old school for us.
So let's do the car of the week first, and then we'll do some old school.
All right, what do we got, Ray?
What do you think that is?
BMW.
That is, yes. He doesn't say what year it is.
That looks, I'm going to say 04, 03.
I would think 05, 06, but let's find out from Ray. Comes with 2 sets of keys and the fobs. It's gorgeous. Catch it before it goes to auction. He says the second gear has a slight bump, so they're not going to, we can't sell it, but they are selling it. It's been driving for 2 days. It's got 175,000 miles on it. 5,900 plus fees is what Ray's looking for on that one.
Yeah.
It is a 2008.
2008. Okay. And these are very, very reliable, durable automobiles. They are easy to maintain. They're not complex cars. It's an automatic. And so chances are with 175,000 miles, it doesn't seem as though you would need to do a new transmission, but a full transmission service may be beneficial to the bump in the second. It's not clear as to why. Sometimes that could be remedied or made better just by way of giving it a pretty aggressive flush for the transmission. And then also it's possible, although I don't know enough about the technology used in this car, it could be that the shift module might need to be replaced. And Ray says it's loaded with everything, heated steering wheel, etc., which is great. And it looks like it's got a couple of other exterior accessories that make it a premium model. So that's nice. And for $5,900, if you want to look good, you want to have fun, and you don't want to spend a lot of money, it's a great opportunity for somebody who is going to use this car. And he says it's gorgeous. So one owner. He just can't
retail it, yet you're asking us to retail it for you, Ray.
He's saying he can't retail it because it has a mechanical issue that he cannot correct, or he's not going to correct.
Right. But if he's going to sell it, just disclose it up front that that's got the issue and what you've just done, and everything should work out beautifully.
Yeah.
That is a good looking car. The auctions are, well, Ray can give the report better than I can, but prices are definitely fluctuating again. Things are going down.
Yep.
It's a catch before the auction deal. So that one's going to head to the auction, but you might want to get it first.
There you go. There's, as we had the conversation, you weren't there on the call this week. One of the car club members was looking for a car for their daughter. And there are a tremendous amount of very good quality vehicles with under 100,000 miles that can be purchased for less than $10,000. And although this one has 175,000 miles, most likely those are highway miles. And so here's a great car with not a lot of miles, because many of these vehicles will do 200, 250, 300,000 miles. As long as you keep after the cosmetics, there's no way of knowing that they have that many miles on them. So there's a lot of vehicles out there for under $10,000. And if you're looking to save a little bit of money, especially on a first-time purchase for a new driver, I highly recommend purchasing a car in the $8,000 to $12,000 range. Find one that has approximately 100,000 miles, and as long as it's been properly maintained and cared for, in the case of Ray's BMW, a one owner. So that what the history has been is there.
And that car's got 11,600 mile average per year.
Yeah.
15 years. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's lower than the national average, which actually came down. The national average for driving used to be 15,000 a year, but after COVID, the average dropped so much, so the national average dropped. I think the national posted average is around 13,000 miles. And part of the reason why miles matter on a car is historic or legacy, because people used to think, well, the chassis, the frame, all these things, the metal wears down, the bolts don't hold tight like they used to. All those things that did matter when you had a lot of miles no longer matter as much. And that includes rust and, all those things that did have a heavier impact on a vehicle. But today you have galvanized steel, you have aluminum parts, you have synthetic suspension bushings, you have really, really refined and well-developed engines that are sealed, so they're not as subject to some of the corrosion that occurs over miles and miles of use. So 100,000 miles is the new 50,000 mile.
Yeah. By the way, the bump is infrequent. Sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't. It's kind of like a almond Mounds bar. Sometimes you feel like a nut, and sometimes you don't.
I wonder if people remember that, Dan.
Probably not. Coconut. Who wants coconut in a candy bar?
That's my least favorite. Coconut.
Speaking of coconut, it's time for old school.
Let's coconut. All right, we're going old school today, and this one's a surprise for Dan. I don't think he's even aware of what it's going to be.
I have no idea.
We do try to mix it up a little bit. I try to surprise Dan now and then with vehicles maybe he hasn't thought of, and vehicles maybe our listeners haven't considered for quite a long time. These cars, I'll give you a clue, they were everywhere when they first came out. And the company that manufactured them hit the target perfectly, because when this car came to North America, it arrived right at the point of the worst fuel crisis in North America, and that was in 1973. And so what Datsun did when they offered the B210 in North America is they hit the perfect spot for not only a drivable, usable, inexpensive sedan, four-door, or fastback model. They hit it with the perfect price. The car got great fuel economy, and it established the brand, the Datsun brand, as a brand to rely on and build up through the years. Now, Datsun had already made significant inroads into the North American market with the with the 240Z. So the Datsun brand was becoming well known, and this was before Datsun then went to their North American brand redo to Nissan. But the B210 was a handsome, cheap, very utility-oriented vehicle, and you could get in a range of different combinations. This was a small wheel, small engine, great fuel economy, 4-speed manual or automatic, not high-powered by any means, but a very, very durable, drivable vehicle, and they were everywhere. I think, Dan, you might remember in the 70s, late 70s to the early 80s, these were all over. But to find one today is much harder than you might think.
Yeah.
Now, the desirable one is the one we're looking at right now, and that is the fastback, or I think they even dared call it a GT. but they made some really clever models, which are very hard to find. If you go look for the B210 Honeybee, which was yellow with a little stripe on the bottom portion of the car and a little animated bee. The Honeybee was actually a cute little package you could buy, and it had no carpet. It just had a black floor mat. It had roll-up windows where you had to actually crank your windows up and down. Virtually no amenities whatsoever, and it was a fun, inexpensive little car that I think when it came out was under $3,000.
Yeah, so here's a little ad for it. Lowest priced, highest gas mileage Datsun you can buy. 41 highway, 29 city.
Yeah. Now think of that. 41 on the highway. This is a non-hybrid vehicle, and this is 1974. So for a non-hybrid vehicle, this might at this point, this ad might be 78 or 79, but this is a non-hybrid vehicle getting 41 miles to the gallon on the highway. That's very impressive. So, and today, if you were to go to try and find one, it would be very difficult to find one. But if you did find one, you want to buy, again, in this situation, you want to buy one. There it is with the stripe. Very rare. And again, hard to find these cars. You'll want to find one that is very original, not been modified. Get one that has a very nice interior. These are not difficult cars to repaint, but if the original paint is in good shape, great. You'll notice that they have enormous bumpers on them, which doesn't help the look of the car. But if you want to customize one, you can remove those bumpers, slightly lower it, put it on slightly larger, bigger wheels and tires, and you'll have a nice little unique sport vehicle. But just stock as it is, you can expect to pay a whopping $5,000 to $8,000 for one. And if you go looking for the fastback version, you might pay a little bit more. But these are very desirable nowadays. Here's one. This was on Bring a Trailer, and did it sell for over 10,000?
9210.
Yeah. So
you got the 210 in there.
Got the 210 in there. And this is a very nice, in very nice condition, very presentable. Looks like it might even be the original paint. There's that Datsun engine, which super reliable, great fuel economy. Believe it or not, people are going to restore these cars in the future because you just don't see them anymore. And they'll become worth restoring because they are rare. So that is the Datsun B210. If you were to go with the fastback, you might pay another 25 to 30% more for the vehicle because it is more desirable because of the body design. And they did make fewer of the fastback version. Now, those wheels, I don't know if those are stock to that car because I've only seen Honeybees with the steel wheels and the hubcaps because they were base model cars.
Well, there you go. Now, what's amazing to me, I had an 81 Datsun. Oh, look at this. My son's popping in. Hope show is going well. Wingstop today? Thanks, Josh. Josh, give it a like on YouTube, please. Help the algorithm.
Josh got excited because he thought maybe you might be buying him a B210.
No. But I had an 81 280ZX.
Yes.
And it was a Datsun by Nissan.
Yes.
And then I think 82 became Nissan by Datsun. And I think by 84, they just dropped the Datsun name altogether.
Well, it was important for Nissan, the parent company, when they came to the United States, they said Nissan is too hard for people to pronounce. Let's do Datsun. And so they came to the United States as Datsun. That was the brand for the North American branded Nissan. So when they did the brand transfer back to the Nissan name or to the Nissan name, they had to slowly introduce that idea. And they did it through North American branding and North American marketing with their advertising campaign. They actually submitted to most of the North American automobile publications the announcements, the press releases, and gave people the script for how to address that in the articles that would be written about Datsun's transferring to Nissan, because they were concerned that the public would think the company had been bought by another company. And that
it says, I just looked this up. It said that changing the signs at 1,100 Datsun dealerships cost them $30 million.
Yeah. Yeah, and you remember
that's expensive signs.
Another brand that did this change was the fuel company Esso, that changed to Exxon, and it was a difficult transition again, because most people would think, oh, that's no longer the trusted brand I have, and so they were worried about that. That's a whole other conversation which we can have around branding, because automobile companies, especially American automobile companies, have done a lot of that brand variation. If you look at Mercury for the Ford division, the Mercury is a Ford. There's nothing really that different between Mercurys and Fords, but because they're differently set up and differently branded, there's a lot of proven interest around that brand within the Ford market grouping.
Yeah. Now, one thing that popped up earlier I wanted to get to, I think it's a good conversation to end the show on, is Janice says her husband bought a Nightmare from Bring a Trailer.
Oh, wow.
Well, I'd like to hear, Janice, if you're still watching, what was it? Give us some details. We'll pull up the listing. We can dig into this. I love this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we can actually save that for our next show, but that's a fascinating subject. This is not unusual. The challenge with Bring a Trailer is that even though you can see the car and you get a lot of information from looking at it, and you get a lot of information from people who are commenting about it, it's difficult to really see the car as it's going to be when it arrives, because photos, they don't lie, but they tell your brain that what you want to see is confirming. And oftentimes you don't look at details that you see when you have the depth of in-person investigation. So she bought a 79 Honda Civic Wagon, which, by the way, is a good car to buy. And if the condition visually appears really good and it doesn't have a lot of rust, you can't go wrong, because a 79 Honda, even if you needed to do a lot of work, engine work, transmission, brakes, tires, whatever, it's not going to set you back a lot of money. But the nightmare might be for you guys that what arrives is completely different from what was represented. But I do have some tips for you, Janice, and your husband, and I can certainly help walk you through what you need to do if you no longer want to be want to continue ownership of that vehicle, or you want to rescind the sale, or you want to have a conversation with the people that Bring a Trailer. It would be curious. It would be interesting to. Dan and I will do a little bit of backstory with this car. It looks like a nice car overall. What was the final amount paid?
$6,300.
Which is not a lot of money if the car is complete and it's a no rust vehicle and it's in great shape.
Now, this is the work that they reportedly have done.
Okay. And Bring a Trailer. they state that the work was reportedly done because there's no way for them to confirm. So it is reported by the owner as having been done, not confirmed. If you read earlier language on 2015, 2016 Bring a Trailer auctions, you'll see that they state those things as though they are factual. They don't even say restored anymore on Bring a Trailer. They say refurbished or reportedly refurbished by. So,
well, here, if you look, here's somebody that said that evening, if you decide to sell in the future, let me know. Our internet was out this morning and I was unable to bid. So there's someone that's interested in the car, Janice. So
yeah, and
maybe you could actually do it.
And if you get that information, the way to do that is I can explain again how to track that. If that person left their name in their comment, because you can't contact them directly just through their name, but you can track them. You can also contact Bring a Trailer, your auction manager, and you can state to them, could you please give the email, our email, to this particular user? We feel like we did not get the vehicle as represented and we want to sell it, and we will fairly relate the information that we have learned to that buyer.
Says it has lots of parts. It's in the shop.
That's unfortunate. But these things do happen. And oftentimes people have a range of interpretation. I can't tell you how many times, and this is probably true with Dan, you go out to look at a car and they tell you over the phone, it's beautiful, it's perfect, the paint is fantastic, the interior is like new. And you get out there and you say, how is this fantastic? How is this interior like new? What about this? There's a tear here. Well, that's normal wear. No, that's not like new. Did you buy it new with a tear in it? Well, you know what I mean when I say it's like new. It's mostly perfect. It's yeah.
She'll let us know when it gets out of the Honda hospital.
Okay.
Oh, well, Dan says work may be reported as done, but was it done correctly?
That's also another thing.
And one final thing to end on. Over in Ireland, Hyundai is currently running a big campaign, so they start saying their name the same way you guys do. We usually pronounce it Hyundai.
Hyundai. Yeah. Yes. And Hyundai has done a good job building their brand. The Hyundai brand originally, when it came to the United States, was a very low market brand. Yeah. It was about the worst.
$99 a month you can get a Hyundai Excel for.
Yeah. And so they were for the longest time really not regarded as cars to own long-term or retain long-term. If you bought one new, you bought it because it was a low-priced vehicle and you got out of it as quickly as you could. And then went on to the next one. And they had their challenges, but they have improved their technology tremendously. Lower than a Yugo. No, the Yugo was the lowest.
It was close though. I think the Hyundai, the Yugo came it was $39.99 when it came here.
I think the Yugo came before the Hyundai.
The Yugo did, but the Yugo was like $19.99.
Yeah,
it was like super cheap. But I think $39.99 was what the Hyundai Excel was.
Yeah, and it was a well-appointed car for that money. The problem was that they didn't last. So
Dad's one of the first dealerships there. That's cool.
Yeah, and Subaru had the same problem. Early Subarus were not reliable, not durable. Most Japanese brand vehicles in North America, Japanese brand cars were built for the Japanese environment. And if you look at the Japanese roadways, Japanese terrain, it's nothing like that in North America. So these cars came to North America, and the long stretch of highways, the constant revving at high, Japanese engineers finally figured out, this is what this is about. We have to completely re-engineer our vehicles for those requirements. Americans are hard on cars. They have a high level of expectation, not just for durability and reliability, but for distances. Americans think nothing of getting in their car and driving 500 miles. That's nothing for Americans. But on an island like Japan, 500 miles is considered a significant trip. Italy, same thing. This is why Fiat had so many problems when they first started importing to the United States. These cars, tiny little engines designed to do basically scooter type work. And they were demolished on American roadways in the 70s when they tried to do a major North American campaign to sell Fiats in the United States.
Yeah. And I pulled up an image real quick of the Hyundai Excel.
Yeah.
And then
which was an important vehicle for the growth of Hyundai in the United States. And that's the reason. The reason why so many automakers want to put an anchor in North America is, for the longest time, it was the market to get into, because not just the volume, but the equity, the brand equity that was offered. This is why Honda invested so heavily in the Acura brand when they built their premium line. It was to build that equity and value in the North American markets.
It was $49.95.
There you go.
Here's their ad. They're 3-door. It looks like $1 million, but cost $995,005 less. I did the math.
Yeah, and what year is this? 1995?
No, this is 1987.
87. Okay. 87. Okay. Yeah. Well, and at that point, it was probably worth investing for Hyundai to build an automobile for the American market. But they should have come earlier. Hyundai should have come early if they had the technology and were able to develop their vehicles early on. They should have been in the North American market earlier, because they would have done much better.
Yeah. Now, $49.95 in 1987 is $13,000 today. So you can't even get an entry level car for $13,000 anymore.
No, I think the lowest entry level is it 19 now? So there's some cars you can get. A Hyundai might have. It's hard to get a base model car, I'll say that. But Hyundai may have a $19,000 car. I think I'm not sure anymore, because the pricing structures have changed so much.
Well, the 10 cheapest cars last year: the Nissan Sentra for $20,635, the Kia Soul for $20,505, the Hyundai Venue for $20,245, the Kia Forte $20,015, Subaru Impreza starts at $19,790.
That's it.
And here it is, the Hyundai Accent, $17,690.
Right. So I would be surprised if you could get a $17,000 Accent. I think supposedly you could get $17,000 Accent. But,
well, that Accent's worth at least $17,000.
Yes.
Actually, the absolute cheapest car is the Chevy Spark.
But you can't get a Spark. I don't think you can get one in the United States anymore. I've looked around for a Chevy Spark.
It's being discontinued.
Yeah.
But if you could find one, the sticker was $14,595. So there's your Hyundai Accent.
They sold a lot of Sparks in Canada. That's one of the ways that I've always been able to figure out when you look on TV and you're looking at a TV show and you wonder when they filmed it. If you see a lot of Sparks on the road, oh, they're filming in Canada.
Yeah. Or you see a B class or an A class Mercedes, which now we're starting to see here.
Yeah.
There was branded as a pony over here. Donkey might have been more apt.
That's right. Donkey.
Yeah, the Hyundai Pony. Adam drives at least 1,000 miles a week for work. So,
yeah,
you could drive, you need 3 Hyundais a week.
That's right. And now the new Hyundais, they're much more reliable, much more durable, much more built. They're much more refined and engineered for North American use. So they're better cars, as are the Kia.
Their sister company, yes.
Right. And Kia is making some really well-built and attractive vehicles. I think from a design perspective, Kia has made significant improvements over the past, I'll say 5 to 7 years.
All right. Speaking of 5 to 7 years, we're 5 to 7 minutes over.
Uh-oh.
Not a big deal.
Well,
we'll be back next week. Monday. We do have the Dan Film Festival. Fun with Dick and Jane, the old one and the new one. Those are our movies we're going to be talking about. And next Saturday might be a time for another drive. I'm not sure.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
We might finally be able to drive the pickup truck. I think I got the classic plates on it now.
Yeah.
That was a fun trip yesterday.
If I'm not mistaken, I think cinnamon rolls are coming out of the oven right now at Jake's. So Jake's Pickup on Bainbridge Island. If you are on the island and you've just gotten off the ferry, just take a left turn on the 305 highway at the intersection and go get one of the most amazing cinnamon rolls you will ever have in your life.
Handcrafted.
Absolutely.
Like an expensive engine.
Yes.
Except it tastes much better.
Much better than eating pistons.
All right. Janice invites us to drive the Honda for our episode.
There you go. We can certainly do that. Assuming it's out of the Honda hospital.
Yes. And one day I'll be up early enough for the movie show. That's right. The movie show for you is it's 8 p.m. East Coast, 5 o'clock West Coast.
There you go. And one day we'll come visit you in Ireland.
We'll do the show a remote. Yeah.
We'll do a remote from Ireland.
We need a sponsor to do that.
Sponsor. Yes. A sponsor to take. Maybe we can, maybe Aer Lingus would be our sponsor.
Watch your mouth. Okay. So that's our show for today. We'll see you next time.
Indeed.
Drive safe, blah, 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 blah. Hey, and make sure you're not too highfalutin out there.
Nah, don't. There you go. You fit it in.
Got to fit it in somewhere. Don't be hoity-toity.
See ya.
Bye.